Hey, good evening. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Well, it's what I call a late night meandering. Somebody said, late night? 9 o'clock? That's really a late night for you? And I had to remind him. I said, when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, late night becomes a relative term. Okay, so very often Beth may get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start editing again from stuff that she's set in motion the night before, and I might sleep through to 5 o'clock and then maybe get up a little bit later, but then we might have some time where we just sit and chat and other stuff, and that's our early morning quality time. And this being let me see, it's only 10 to 8, so my late night critic will be aghast. So sorry about that. This is what I call late night. So we would be heading to bed, or certainly Beth will be heading to bed in about half an hour, I can tell you, depending on her TV program. Well, I thought I'd talk about some of the things which are inherent in being a musician. And being a musician, it's a strange thing, because you usually fall into one of two categories, and that is one of someone who has a leaning towards swing or jazz and can actually feel the rhythm. Now, this is not whether you can listen and feel the rhythm. I'm talking about whether you could start a tune on your radio or on your player, a tune that you know, and then turn it off and continue singing it. And then after what you think might be 8 or 10 bars, turn it back on again. Are you and your player still at the same point in the tune? That tells you whether you've got rhythm. Now, I used to coach. Part of my time in Florida, I coached a band. It was a band of musicians who basically were straight musicians, and that's why I say musicians fall sometimes often into two categories: one where they swing and one where they are what I call straight musicians. These are not musicians who are simply not gay, okay? Because there are two words which have been stolen by homosexual people, and that is gay and straight, and neither should belong to any particular category of sexual orientation in my mind, but they do. So I'm talking about straight musicians as being non-jazz oriented musicians, and these are people who don't actually feel the beat inherently inside them. I used to try to coach these mostly straight musicians in a concert band in Florida, in Fort Myers, the Sanibel area, the Sanibel concert band. I used to try to coach them, and I used to say, you have to listen to your inner metronome. Most people don't have an inner metronome. Now, I'm going to say something which is politically terribly incorrect. When I actually started to coach people in that band about having an inner metronome, a feeling for the beat which is inherent within you, I said, here's something that you have to be aware of. Go to the bathroom mirror and have a look at yourself, and if you're not black, then you're going to have trouble with the beat. Because for some strange reason, I know that generalities don't always work, but for some strange reason, Caucasians seem to have a problem feeling the beat. Now, if you want to have a really, really good example of how a black audience feels the beat, go to a movie called The Blues Brothers, and in one particular scene in The Blues Brothers, they go to a gospel church where it's an all-black congregation and the whole audience is swinging. They are swinging perfectly in time, and nobody's going around patting them on the back telling them this is the beat. They just know it, and it's a fact that, and why do I profess to know that this is a fact? Because I went around almost nightly and played to white audiences in the UK. When I was in a band that was on the road, I was in a band called the Rhythmic Orchestra and Singers, and we went around, and when it came time for audience participation, we would try to get everybody going. Okay, let's all get together. Off the beat. This is off the beat. One, this is off the beat. No matter how you fooled them into starting off the beat and then switching, you start them thinking they're on the beat, which they can do, and then you subtly switch the beat so that they are now off the beat. My God, they will just get back on the beat again. And I see it even here in the Philippines, and it just seems to be something which they can't get. Now, when I say this, it's not musicians don't get away with this either, because many times musicians don't feel it. There are many different criticisms or assessments of why this is so, and anything is just down to opinion. But very often, if you asked even a musician to sing you a song, can you tell me what that particular song is? They wouldn't actually, when it got to a part where they were supposed to hold on with little happening for the beat, they wouldn't be able to do it, and they'd rush it into the next part too quickly. So they wouldn't be feeling the beat. Now, I searched around when I was thinking about doing this little video, and I searched around for a tune. One of the bands that swung the most was Count Basie. The Count Basie band was the most. In fact, they had an incredible. They used to be called the Swinging Basie Band. Well, I'm not saying that other bands didn't do it, but that was one of my favourite bands. You want to listen to an incredible long playing recording, and that is the Atomic Basie. It might have even been the Atomic Mr. Basie, but I think it was the Atomic Basie. And listen to that. One of the most difficult tunes to sing in that, which is actually the simplest melody, was Teddy the Toad. And I'll give you an indication of how, when it got to the end of that, I think it was a 12 bar, and when it got to the end of that, there was very little happening before it came in on the beginning of the tune again. It's very simple tunes going do 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 ba do 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 ba do 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 ba do 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 dee do 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 dee do da ba tu tu ba tu tu ba ba do 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 do. See what I mean? When it gets to the end, where it goes ba do dee do 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 dee do da 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 ba do 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 do. Ask a lot of musicians, and they would rush that bit in order to get back into the start of the tune again, which always amazed me. I didn't understand why they didn't feel that. But then you get a lot of musicians who neither fall into the category of straight musician or swing musician. There's somewhere in between. They have a feel for a certain amount of swing, or they're not jazz musicians. Now, this is something that is another mystery as to why some people can feel a certain kind of music and others just can't. Now when you talk to drummers about this, they will talk about certain players that they play with. Well, every band is separated into different sections, and the rhythm section is the keyboard player, the drummer, bass guitar, and if they have it, a guitar. Now, those people, they are the basis of the rhythm feel in the band, and they are the ones. But setting the tempo of every number usually is the drummer. So the band leader may be out the front, and he may call the tune. So he might say, if he was the band leader, certainly not Count Basie himself, but he might say, Teddy the Toad, and then you would hear the drummer, he would tap the sticks together, where you go, ba 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 do da do da. Now, occasionally you would get a substitute player on bass come in. Now, the bass lies between the actual music part of the not saying that the drummers are not musical, okay, but part of the harmonic side of the band is the bass player lies between there and the rhythm. So he works very, very closely with the drummer. Now, if you get a drummer who likes to push the band along, it's a pushing thing, and then there's a certain amount of what they call layback, where a person will lay back on the beat, and the drummer's job is to push them. Now, that's a marriage of the moment in music, and it has to be perfect. The drummer has to push a certain amount, and whoever is taking a melody can lay back a certain amount too. And the bass player has to unite all of these with what he does, and often you would get a bass player who didn't do that so well. And afterwards, I remember the band had a substitute bass player in, and it just seemed to be a struggle all night, because the bass player just seemed to drag. And I went to the drummer and I said, so what did you think? And he said, it was like trying to drive the Queen Mary through a sea of Mars bars, which, if you know about chocolate, Mars bars are a very, very thick, treacly chocolate. So that's my little foray into talking about jazz and talking about music generally. Something that people don't quite appreciate about music, and that is the tension that goes into being a musician in a performance in the moment. And unlike most of the things, the subjects and the performance and skills that I can think of, if you're a joiner, if you're a bricklayer, if you're a carver, if you're a painter, if you're if you're any one of these skills of producing things, you don't have the same tension as the suspense, the stress that a musician has, because a musician has to produce the best possible result in the moment. No excuses, no getting around it. If he's late, he's late. If he's early, he's early. If he doesn't swing, then he doesn't swing. And the tension of being able to do that, of being able to reach that super C, that note that's way beyond maybe the range of the instrument for normal people, and you are there to produce that. Listen to Maynard Ferguson and many other people who did these high note gymnastics, I call them, and they were able to produce the goods in the moment, every time. And that carried with it a certain kind of stress and certain kind of pressure on the person. That of being able to produce a top result in, say, the recording studio where time is money, and a lot of money, and yet still be able to do it unfailingly and beautifully. So much for being a musician. Can be a stress at times. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Hope you've enjoyed this. Bye for now. I know it's not for everybody, by the way.